Hey, what up? It's Brad with Home Love Construction. Welcome to the Critical Path podcast. I have Dave Keith from MES Group here with me, and Dave Keith is the principal engineer?
Principal electrical engineer. I'm also majority shareholder and president of the company.
Yeah, he runs the show.
Yep.
Yeah. So, Dave, pleasure to have you. We were chatting for a little while before we started, but why don't you introduce yourself and kind of explain like who you are and what you do?
Principal engineer and president of a mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and fire protection engineering firm. We specialize largely in federal contract work. Most of our volume of work comes from the VA, Veterans Administration, the hospitals, things like that. We also do a lot of work for U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and we still dabble in other areas of the federal sphere as well, such as GSA or DLA and things like that.
Yeah.
And we also do some private sector work, but that's usually small projects, renovations, things like that. And another big portion of our business is the multifamily side. Do a lot of apartment complexes all over the country. I mean, so we got some projects going on in North Carolina, projects going on in South Carolina. We just wrapped up high rise in Houston.
Wow.
Every once in a while we'll get involved on the single family residential, but it's usually a high end house that has a lot of complex systems to where they need more than just general contractor to sign for the plans.
Yeah.
So.
Dude, that's awesome. So one thing that I wanted to kind of like highlight here is I typically have kind of like small business owners, like small business CEOs. But you have this is a serious going concern here. Like MES Group is like, this is a big business from my viewpoint.
Okay.
Do you share that viewpoint? Because you've got
I
like,
say we're fairly small.
Yeah.
So,
this is great, but it's perspective, right? It's like,
right. Yeah. If you've ever done some research in the Small Business Administration and how they classify businesses in our particular field, it's the NAICS codes, the North American Industry something. I can't remember the last one.
Yeah.
Good old acronyms. Reminds me of the Army.
Yep.
But so we fit in that 541.330 NAICS code, which is engineering services.
Yeah.
And the small business size standard for that is any engineering firm whose gross revenue is below $22.5 million a year.
Wow.
So we are well below that threshold.
Yeah.
So
wow.
Definitely small.
Wow. Interesting. So got it on the perspective of, small. The cool thing about it is you, coming out of, so we were talking earlier about how you were in the Army. I was also in the Army, both Army officers. We can just say beat Navy together on 3. 1.
I was enlisted, but we'll go with that.
Oh, you were enlisted. Oh, I thought you said 19 Alpha.
19 Delta.
19 Delta. Yes. Got it. Okay.
Cav Scout. I did my basic in IT at Knox.
Oh, there you go. Okay. Got it. Dude, that's awesome. So, what made you want to enlist when you enlisted?
Oh, it was a number of factors. I mean, one, I was in college when 9/11 happened. I was a freshman at St. Pete College.
Yeah.
And I just finished an exam and I walked out, and on the TV we still had the boob tube TVs and the big backs to them standing on the four post racks.
Yeah.
So I walked out of an exam, and there it was on the news. I was like, just caught off guard. I didn't enlist immediately after that. I kind of just stayed aside and did the normal 18, 19-year-old thing of making bad decisions.
Sure.
One day I was 22, and my buddy he enlisted in the Navy right after high school.
Yeah.
Came home for leave, and I wasn't living in a good situation. I didn't like where my life was. And he had me drive him to an Army recruiter because he was looking at transitioning. He was going to re-enlist, but he didn't know if he wanted to stay in the Navy or go into the Army. And so I was like, well, we're here. Might as well go inside and talk to somebody.
You got recruited.
And I got recruited. That was April-ish of 2004. And by August, I was in basic training.
Wow.
I went 19 Delta largely because of my dad. He was in the Army when he was younger.
And for anybody who doesn't know, 19 Delta is a Cav Scout.
Armor Branch Cav Scout.
Yep. So it's kind of like you can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that's kind of the lightest unit in an armor in an army unit. They're the most mobile.
Yeah.
They're the most forward in an armor unit.
Yeah.
You're probably doing a lot of recon, a lot of scouting, right?
That was our that was what we were in the books. It was our I guess just a general explanation of what we were. It was armored reconnaissance specialists. There
you go.
At the time. And the only other branch in the 19 series when I was in was the 19 kilos of tankers.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was either an Abrams or you were a scout. And I forget where I was going with this, but yeah, no. So anyways, when I told my dad I was enlisting, he was like, yeah, you should be a scout. They're the craziest group in the Army, blah, blah, blah. And so I was like, all right, sounds good. And, it was actually kind of odd because when I was at the Tampa MEPS and told him I wanted to be a scout at 19 Delta, he was like, no, that's not available for you. We got to put you here into, I think he was trying to get me in a helicopter doing some aviation stuff something like that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I was like, no, I want my feet on the ground.
There you go.
I don't want to be in the air.
Yeah.
And so he played a game with it, but eventually everything worked out, and I was off to Knox.
Yeah.
And then immediately following that, as soon as I graduated from basic, they dispersed us in needs in the Army, so they sent me to Carson at the time. 3rd Armored Cav Regiment was there as a standalone unit, and they were gearing up for their second deployment of the OIF operations.
Yeah.
And so I got there in December. Right after they finished their NTC, and was like, well, you missed the training course, but you go ahead and get your stuff packed up. We're going to country.
Yeah. You're going to go actually learn with everybody else.
Yeah.
In theater.
Yeah. Like, you can drive a Humvee or something.
Yeah. And so what was it like? When did you get out of the Army?
I got out in 2009.
Wow.
My
God, what an interesting time to get out of the Army. Jesus.
I mean, they were trying to get me to re-enlist, and I thought about re-enlisting, and due to some political issues I don't want to get into because I don't sound like I'm whining. I was just like, it's not working for me.
Yeah.
I got out and they're like, oh, the whole economy's collapsed and there's no jobs and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, well, post 9/11 GI Bill kicks in a few months and go to college, and hopefully the next 3-4 years the economy will bounce back.
Yeah. And so that's what you did is you went to college. Where'd you go to college? And that's for your engineering degree.
Yeah. So when I enlisted, I'd already completed probably about 55 hours of coursework at SPC.
Yeah.
A lot of it was classes I didn't need, but
classic.
Yeah, that's how it usually happens. You don't know what you're doing. But so I went back. I spent a year there finishing up my associates.
Yeah.
And then transferred to USF Engineering and got accepted in the mechanical program. And then I kind of just, with the post 9/11 GI Bill, I was getting my tuition was completely covered.
Yeah.
I was getting a stipend for books and I was getting a housing allowance.
Wow.
So I'm like, all right, I was married with 2 kids at the time. I told my wife, I'm like, if we stretch it thin, get a couple student loans, we can probably just survive off this.
Yeah.
And she was working at a doctor's office at the front desk at the time. So, we were able to make things work.
Yeah.
So I didn't work. I steamrolled through college, did about 15 hours on average a semester. Wow. And the worst one was, like the third semester of my junior or the second semester of my junior year, I did 18 hours straight. And it was like classes, fluid dynamics, kinematics and dynamics machinery. I mean, I'm throwing these big names out there to make it sound complicated. They were some pretty rough classes.
Yeah. Were they big on problem sets there? Like, would you have to do problem sets as like between classes? Is that a thing? Or?
No, not that I can think of.
So I went to West Point, and one thing that I did physics at West Point, and one thing that both the physics and nuclear engineering and the mechanical engineering department were huge on is a thing called problem sets. Okay. Which is it's a fancy word for homework. You had to go through and just work through. They'd give you like 100 problems that you had to work through, and they would do on whatever date, right? And it was always like the day before they're due, everybody's like coming together in like the common area to all work on the problem sets. Not cheat, but to like help each other get through the problem set and like explain. But yeah, that was like, have some
Okay.
memories of that for sure. That's very real to me.
Yeah.
The 18-hour semesters.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we had homework. We had regular homework. A lot of the professors had required homework, and I mean, there weren't 100 problems per week. I mean, it was probably every.
It wouldn't be a week. It'd be every couple of weeks we get a big fat one, and it'd be like, oh, here we go. Some late nights ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there wasn't that many, but I mean, like one problem within it would have 3-4 pages to answer.
Yeah.
And so there'd be like 4 or 5 of those per lesson, and so on and so on. And the more advanced the classes got, the deeper we got in the degree, the worse the problems got. Got to a point where some of them, not only did we have the homework problems, wanted to see if we can do it by hand, but it was for vibrations, for example. We had to they'd give us a problem, like, all right, the actual solution is going to take, a computational computer program.
Yeah.
But, just find these by hand. And again, it'd be one of those 2 or 3 page solutions. And then they're like, okay, now part of this, I want you to also use MATLAB, and, here's
MATLAB.
Here's a program you have to kind of use. Parameters, go ahead and we had to figure out a bit of the programming ourselves on that as part of the
like how to actually write it so it could give you the solution that you're looking for.
Yeah.
Did you find that was helpful to have to, like, in what you're doing now?
Well, what I'm doing now in an odd twist is not mechanical at all.
Right.
So, as I said, I'm the principal. My degree was mechanical engineering, but I'm the principal electrical engineer at my company.
Yeah.
And how that started, just before I graduated, I got an internship at a manufacturing plant.
Yeah.
And I was there for about 6 months. And
what type of manufacturing plant?
Medical device manufacturing.
Okay. Yeah.
They do a lot of
hairnets clean suit type.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah. No. We had a clean room that we had to wear all that stuff in, but it was what they manufactured was catheter securement products and urinary incontinence products.
Yeah.
And so I went there as a manufacturing process engineer.
Yeah.
And so I was just kind of like,
oh, okay.
You're doing everything. You get the manufacturing processes you got to maintain, building systems you have to maintain, conducting studies, new product development you have to work on, and how to go through and make the products better optimizing things like that.
Yeah.
I was there for 6 months. It was very rewarding. I loved working there. I liked working with machines. I liked solving problems.
Yeah.
For just a quick example, we had one of our process machines that was used for our incontinence products.
Yeah.
And it only had 3 posts, so it was capable of doing maybe 15 to 20 parts per hour.
It had 3 posts, meaning like positions on the assembly line?
Yeah. So I mean, it had rotating posts, and it was itself like an assembly table that we used to help with the products. It was a glue process that we came through. So the machine had an arm, a glue gun came down. And so to effectively apply the glue properly and evenly, we had a machine that did everything. Yeah. And it was a rudimentary machine, not something that was professionally built, but something that we had
kind of cobbled together a little bit.
Yeah, something that the company had made in house over their career. And then one of my first tasks was taking the 3-post machine, turning it into a 6-post machine, and basically doubling the productivity.
Oh wow.
So we go through, do that. We had all the parts and SolidWorks already done. So I'm like, okay, contact the machine shops, got some quotes, send the parts out.
Yeah.
And I finally get everything in, and I'm assembling the machine and working on it and trying to adjust everything and fine tune it. I'm going through it. I'm spending like a week of just trying to fine tune it and make the whole thing work, and nothing is coming right.
Yeah.
And then I'm sitting there. I was like, man, if only there was like some alignment tool I can use to help me with this process. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm an engineer. I can design one. Wow. So I got up, went to my desk, got on SolidWorks, sat down, just drew something up. Sent it off to the machine shop. A couple of days later, we had the part came through, test fitted, it worked beautifully.
Wow.
Was able to go through, put it in process, and something I'd spent a week trying to go through and do adjustments.
Yeah.
Took me about 30 minutes and it was done. So I'm like, man, this is awesome.
Isn't that amazing how, so when I first got into construction, I had a similar experience to that where are you familiar with like additions and tying in roofs at all? Like it's more on the architectural
Yeah.
side, but you get the concept of
Right.
you have a new roof you're going to tie into an existing. There's all sorts of angles working around, right? Like for sleepers and anyways. I'm working with our framing crew at the time, and I'm like, I had just gotten out of the Army. I'm like, hey, I'm going to go help my family like grow the construction business, which is what we're doing now. And I'm literally, these guys are yelling off the roof to me how to work a square and get all the angles right and what angle to run the circular saw at. And I'm literally just like doing what they're telling me, like the measurements, and I'm like throwing the boards up, and then I get up there and there's this perfectly framed overbuild roof. And I was just like, how in the hell? Like it's so rewarding the first time that you spec something and then it gets made to your specs and it just works perfectly.
Yeah.
It's like magic. Isn't it crazy to actually see something that you design in a computer program? It gets built or machined by machine shop, shipped to you, and then it works exactly like it. That. For me, that is literally magic. Like it's incredible. Yeah. I the other time that happened is in one of my last physics classes. It was like an applied class. We had to build a laser tracking system that moved it basically moved an iris like a receiver in response to the movement of a laser. So it had to follow it at a certain rate of movement. And it was actually a trick thing because we tried building it with an X and Y axis. The trick was to turn it and make it a diamond. That's how you got the fastest response. Anyways, but we built it and it worked and it followed the laser. And the first time we turned it on and it followed the laser, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing.
That's
it's
awesome.
like, creating is so fun. Have you, obviously, I'm assuming you know who Elon Musk is. I would assume. Have you like studied or heard at all about like his process of building his factories for Tesla and SpaceX and everything? Are you familiar with that at all?
I have not, no.
Oh my gosh. Are you a big reader?
Sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes. Yeah, I get it.
Usually with codes and stuff like that.
Oh, with codes? Oh, dude, and this would be easy. So Elon Musk's newer biography, they go really in depth on what he had to do. Like specifically, like there's a story in there about a glue machine that was gluing fiberglass strips to the bottom of battery packs. And he winds up changing something and getting, he basically has spent, not a lot of people know this, but before he bought Twitter, which he recently bought and turned into the X platform, he spent the earlier 8 years designing manufacturing systems.
Okay.
That is literally what he has been spending his time doing.
All right.
And he's just had to figure it all out and actually make it work. Similar to what you were talking about. It's like make a machine, oh wait, it doesn't work, and then figure out how to actually make it work.
Right.
Yeah, that's I love that. One of my dreams is to own a truss manufacturing plant.
Okay.
Like I've actually got a list of all of like the 26 top prospects in the state of Florida that we would do. I've gone through and done like what's their, what do I think their profit per square foot is and what can we make it? Manufacturing is very, very interesting to me.
And as I was saying, it was pretty rewarding being there.
Yeah.
But one day, it's just a funny story actually. The company I'm at now, I got contacted by the secretary there, Carrie. She's not with the company anymore, but at the time she was, and she was like, "Hey, I came across your resume. I was wondering if you're interested." And I said, "No, thanks. I got a job. I'm good."
Yeah, yeah.
And then I came in, told the production manager about it. Like, I just got a random call from an engineering firm who wanted me to go through and do an interview. And he's like, when's your interview? And I'm like, oh, I turned him down. He's like, dude, what are you doing? You mean go see what's out there? So I'm like, okay, the next day. Get another call from a different firm, one that's right here in St. Pete.
Oh wow!
And they're like, hey, why don't you come out and come talk to us for an interview? So I was like, all right. Went there. I mean, I was there doing the interview for about 2.5 hours, and we did not talk about engineering one bit.
Wow!
Talked about everything else under the sun. I mean, the owner, he grew up in the Army. Him and his brother both served. Wow. His brother was in the Vietnam era. And I mean, their dad was a drill sergeant, so they moved around. They knew all the places, and he had graduated high school here in Largo. And I'm like, I went to Largo High School.
Wow.
All this and the other. And so we just talked about that for a couple hours, and then a couple weeks later, I got invited to come back for a second interview, and they made me an offer on the spot. And so I reluctantly took it, but it turned out to be one of those it turned out to be a good thing. And then when they made the offer, they're like, hey, just one caveat, you know, we want you to do electrical engineering for 1 year so you can, you know, get the full depth and breadth of all the disciplines. Yeah. So you kind of groom you to be a project manager. So you just, in this industry, to be a project manager, you have to know kind of all the different disciplines you're working with, because you have to either know who you have to get or be able to understand what they're talking about, so you can go back and get the people involved with the with the problem, so you can get to a solution.
When you say project manager from an engineering company perspective, is that an in progress like oversight engineer, or are you managing a project of getting a plan set done and ready to build, or is it both?
Both. I mean, I'd say it really depends on the company, how they're set up or how their structure is.
Yeah.
At that company, their project managers were the high level engineers that did the contract negotiations, the scoping of the projects, figuring out, and then once they had all their information, they bring it to us and the design team, and we're like, this is the project, this is the location, this is what we're doing, these are the systems you're working with, these are some of the nuances you have to be concerned with, you know, here's our deadline, go.
Yeah.
And so as a designer, I mean, we rarely went out to site visits. You know, often weren't allowed to talk to the architects or the other clients or anything. And all the communication we did was with the project managers, and then they would go through and get our questions answered for us. Wow. I was there for almost 6 years, and you know, the 1 year I was supposed to spend doing electrical turned into the entire time.
Yeah.
And when it was time for me to go sit for the PE after I had my 4-year apprenticeship done, I was like, you know, I might as well try electrical first.
Yeah.
So that was what I focused on, and thankfully I passed. I mean, it was one of the lower first time pass rates in the exams, and you know, my background was more than mechanical, so I had to learn a lot of stuff before I went and sat for that.
Yeah.
But you know, with I think it was a 47.5% first time pass rate, and I was in that 47.5%.
Dude, that's low. That's really low.
Yeah.
Damn.
So I was impressed myself. I thought I failed. I mean, when I left, like the first part of the exam were just like, it was general overall things I don't really see a whole lot in my industry, in the construction side of the industry.
Yeah.
But so I was really nervous I didn't do well enough in the first half.
Yeah.
The second half of the exam, it seemed to be a lot more focused into what we do. So it was one-line diagrams, a lot of code application items.
Yeah.
You know, things that I would expect to see in a project, you know, doing calculations for meter sockets or service calculations, things like that. So I was like, this is all stuff I do on a daily basis.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the questions they had on there, I'm like, I can see somebody who's not in my industry sitting there trying to do, you know, KVL and doing analysis to figure out how much voltage is at the center tap on a 240 Delta high leg. And I'm like, okay, well, I did a project on this last week. It's this much.
Oh, wow.
So, like,
wow. Yeah.
Stuff like that. I mean, I finished the second half of the exam in like an hour and a half.
Yeah. Wow.
And as I was walking out, the proctor was like, you sure don't want to stay and go over your answers? And I'm like, nope, I'm good.
Yeah, you're like, I've been doing this for 6 years.
No, it wasn't even that. I was more or less, I was so dead set that I'd failed the first part that you know, there's no point wasting my time, and then to go back.
You're like, I'll see you next week.
Yeah, well, they're still only doing the exam once every 6 months. So if I had failed, I would have had to wait till the following October.
Yeah.
So, anyways, when she was like asking, I was like, no, I mean, honestly, I just want to get out of here. And if I you know did you know chances are if my answer was correct, you know, I didn't want to take a chance of taking a correct answer and turning it into a wrong one. So I was like, it's not good. And then you know, it still took. Then it was still taking a long time for them to do the grading. So it was like 8.5 weeks. I just had to wait and wait and wait and wait and wait and
8.5 weeks.
Yeah.
Sounds like they waited 8 weeks and then graded them. You know.
No, there's a whole process to it. I'm not sure. Yeah, I mean, I read up on the process because again, that's you know, the things I do read are you know, things like that. So
books, I
read the process of how they grade and what they do and things like that. And so
NEC Chapter 8, it's a doozy.
Yeah. So yeah, no, like, I mean, the following day, my wife and I were going off to Jamaica for a week, and I was just miserable the whole week. She was so upset. And then the following, when we got back from that, I was like, oh, I'm gonna go get the study pack and do this, and just go through and just, pay for the exam or register for the October exam now. Just get it in my mind. I'm going, and then I got the results and passed. I'm like, no way.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then what was the path from there to where you are now?
So the path from there to where I'm at now, and unfortunately, it didn't work out with the company I was at. No, it was just, I don't know exactly what happened, but I got laid off, and it was a pretty decent severance package. But I got laid off, and then as soon as I put my resume online, within a couple of days, I had 4 interviews lined up.
Wow.
And of those 4 interviews, I got job offers from 3 of them. The company I'm at now at MES was actually the last interview.
Wow.
And the other company, the other 2 companies, they may be good offers, but with MES, it just turned out it was closer. It was less of a drive. For one of the firms, I got stuck in traffic for 3 hours trying to go to my interview. The other one was, another 15 miles north of where my office is at now. And at MES, the office is right off the interstate. So I live in St. Pete, right off the interstate. They're right off the interstate. Pre-COVID, it was a 45-minute trip. Once we got in the COVID era, and even now that we're still kind of in the aftermath of that, it's a 15, 20-minute drive to work.
Wow.
So that was actually the biggest
phenomenal.
deciding factor.
Yeah, I get it.
Got there, and whatever I did, I just impressed the owner enough to where he took me from I was designing / project managing, and then from there I got moved to director within a few months of being there. And then he took me and my wife out to dinner, and then let me know that he was thinking about retiring soon, and he needed a successor. And I didn't know at the time that he had spoken to 2 others at the company that I found out shortly after. But anyway, so we go to dinner, and I express interest in buying his half of the company.
Yeah.
With no money, I had 0 money.
Wow.
So
good. So this is like, listen to what this guy's about to say here, because this is like basically what you're telling me is that what you are about to say you did, anybody could do.
Yeah. Talks quieted. There's whispers going through the company, and several months had passed. And one day, he brings us into.
I'm sure that was nerve-wracking. Or like what? Yeah.
My goal was always to be ownership, either my own starting my own company or whatever. But this kind of helped out. But anyway, so he brings us in the conference room, and he lets us know that his business partner was actually looking to get out at the same time.
Yeah.
He didn't want to be. He wanted to move back up north, be closer to his family, and just ready for a new chapter in life. Yeah. So they were entertaining an offer from another firm to buy him out.
Yeah.
And this is when I found out about the other 2 individuals that were in on the buyout plan. And so I kind of just looked at them and looked at the president of the company. I was like, well, how about we buy the company from you?
Yeah.
Just flat out.
Yeah.
And I said that before I'd spoken to my business partners to even see if they would see if they're interested.
Yeah.
And it turned in. It was a 6 to 8 month negotiation process.
Yeah.
The firm that was interested in buying them, they went silent for a long time. COVID hit, and all things kind of transpired really quickly. But we left. We talked amongst the 3 of us. My business partners Nick and Phil. I don't know if you went on our website, but they're listed on there as the principals and vice presidents. And so we spoke to them, and we discussed it and things like that. And originally it was supposed to be a 33% share of the company. Well, we're equally 1/3 each.
Yeah.
And so once we got through that, we got to we discussed the terms of the buyout with the owners, how we were going to do it. It was a long process. It was a 4-year process.
Wow.
Before playing 4.5 years, and we did it in 3.5.
Yeah.
And so, we discussed the process, laid out the things, the rules that we had to abide by. And then in 2021, we signed the initial plan, where we get a small portion of the company. The owners at the time continue to be owners, but they take a step back, let us step in, run day-to-day operations, learn how to get the finances down, start integrating with the teaming partners, the other architecture firms that we work with, and get a better handle on how to go from managing an engineering project to managing a company that does engineering projects, which is a very, very different thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's in my industry, most contractors never get over the hump of managing a job to managing a business.
Yeah. Yeah.
Similar transitional jump.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, so the market group for MES has always been in the federal market. And I'm not sure if you're aware of it, but there's the SBA has programs called set aside small disadvantaged business things. One of those is veteran-owned small businesses, and to take that to the next level is a service disabled veteran-owned small businesses.
Ah, yes.
So, when I transitioned out of the Army in 2009, I started going to Bay Pines for my healthcare in 2009.
Yep.
And I've been a recurring patient at Bay Pines for the last 15 years.
Yeah.
And, I never thought about, even applying for disability. Never a blip in my mind, never a reason, or I didn't think that, the things I was dealing with or the issues I was having, I didn't think it warranted disability. In my mind, it didn't warrant disability.
Yeah.
And I spoke with one of my buddies who was in Iraq with me. He got out. He's an entrepreneur as well. He owns a dog training company, based out of Germany, but he does a lot of work here. Talking to him, and he had his disability since the time we got out of the Army. I'm like, dude, this is 2009. Yeah. And so I applied. I did the intent to file through the to the VA their online system, and they reviewed my medical history, and they're like, no, you definitely qualify. And so I got my disability rating. This was after we'd already done the initial phase of our buyout process. Yeah. And so I informed the owners about it. I was like, oh, hey, by the way, I just got my disability rating and this, that, and the other. Yeah. And so that turned into a very, very different dynamic in the buyout process. It caused my partners and I to go through and change our agreement entirely to being equal thirds, to me being 51%, and then splitting the remaining 49.
Yeah, because with you being 51% owner, you now qualify not only for the veteran set asides, but the service disabled veteran set asides, which is a very limited competition.
It is
for the projects that you're going after. I mean, I don't want to say none because it's not none, but it's pretty limited. The reason I say that
about
is
1,000 or so firms across the country.
Yeah. But how many of them are really going to go after each project? There's maybe 1,000 that are eligible.
Yeah, true. I mean, there's some that projects just are not in their wheelhouse. It's not in their specialty, or there's some that I talk to where the projects are too small. It's not worth their time.
Right.
Since we're a growing up and coming company, we're taking whatever we can get.
Yeah. I know that feeling.
And currently, so right now the issue is right now MES is not service disabled certified yet, so we're going through the SBA process. Yeah, which I'm kind of alluding to. We started the process in 2021. I got my disability status, and we still had years to go for the plan that we had. So the owner of the company was like, "Well, hey, why don't you do this?" And he laid a proposition out to me, and I was like, I can do that, yeah. And so what that proposition is to start a second company by myself.
Yeah.
One that it's because it doesn't violate the non-compete we had, and I can use that as a vehicle to go for projects. Yeah. And so I did. I started up a completely separate entity. and I hired some good lawyers who helped me get everything set up, go through the process, explain to me what exactly I can do, what I can't do to stay within the laws, the rules. And so once we had all that knowledge and set up, I had an SDVOSP company I could use.
Yeah.
I didn't think that we'd win a project with it.
Yeah.
But we did. And the project was a very successful project, and we did a great job. And that changed changed the situation more.
Yeah. Yeah. Because all of a sudden now there's actually real dollars that coming in through that. It's not an idea anymore.
Yeah, right. No, I mean, and so the from a financial standpoint, everything had to stay completely separate. I couldn't conflate the two companies at all.
Sure. Yeah.
And so especially because I'd only owned a very small portion of stock. I owned enough portion of the stock in MES at the time to be able to identify as a principal of the company.
Yeah.
As a part owner.
Mm-hmm.
So the buyout plan we had in place, we had to augment it, and we did it a year and a half sooner. So as of January 1st of this year, we became official owners of MES Group.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And so I'm working.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And I'm currently working with the same legal team to help get MES certified. And it's taken longer than anticipated.
Yeah.
But we're working through the process,
Yeah.
and hopefully we'll have it by the end of December, so that way, come January 1st, we'll be able to start chasing projects with the MES vehicle.
That's awesome. That's fantastic, man. So what did you always want to be? What did you think you'd be? Well, yeah, you said you always thought you'd either be owning a business or running your own business.
Right.
Why? Like, where did that come from for you? Like, is that something you
my
thought
parents
about as a kid?
both entrepreneurs. My grandparents were entrepreneurs.
Wow.
So yeah, I remember from a very young age, my grandfather owned a restaurant in Indian Rocks Beach, which he later sold it, and then he just retired.
Yeah.
My grandmother then she started a restaurant in Bel Air Bluffs. So it was just in from the Bel Air Beach area.
Yeah.
There for a few years. She sold that. And then she went to go open up her own fish market. She worked there forever, until she passed away.
Yeah.
And then so growing up, I worked for all these different companies. My dad owned an irrigation company, and so from the time I was big enough to carry a shovel and use it properly.
Yep.
I would go work with him on days I didn't have to go to school, or if I wanted money for something, he would like, I'm not going to give it to you. You can go work for it.
Yeah. Man, irrigation, what a great business. So simple. It is. It's a great business. I mean, put the pipe in the ground. Don't need a plumber. Done.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. But it's here in Florida, so imagine being out there
doing the work is terrible. I'm talking about owning the business.
Yeah. No, we're doing a main line, digging 8 inches wide by 18 inches deep. Put a main line at a condo in Tierra Verde.
Yeah.
And construction manager walks past us and sees me in a hole and is like, "Yeah, that's why my mom put me through college, so I didn't have to do that."
Wow.
I was 16 at the time. I'm like, okay.
You're like, idea. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the other option was to throw my shovel at him, but I restrained.
Yeah. Good job.
And then my mom, she worked for my grandparents' restaurants most of my young life as a bartender and server. And then when the restaurant sold, she was a bartender at other places. While she was doing that, she put herself through school. She got licensed to become a mortgage broker. Went to go work for a company. She was there for a few years. She became very successful really quickly.
Wow.
This was during the bubble, when mortgage was a huge thing. And so that company she was working for let her become, wanted to be branch manager, and she moved off to Jacksonville. Later, she left that company and opened up her own mortgage business, and she's been running that out of Hernando, Citrus County area for the last almost 15 to 20 years now. Wow. Even when the economy crashed and the mortgage industry went belly up with it. she was able to stick with it. She went back to she scraped and did what she could and what she had to do to keep her company afloat.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a couple of years where she went back to waiting tables as a
Wow.
You can imagine as a 48, 50-year-old woman waiting tables just to get enough money to keep life going, to keep her business back up and running. And then the mortgage industry turned around. Obviously, it's not booming like it was pre-crash, but it's probably a good thing.
Yeah.
And she's very successful at it now. And so, growing up, I was in the construction industry and surrounded by entrepreneurs my entire life. It was like, this is to be happy in life, to be successful in life. I view that as what I had to do.
Yeah.
And then aside from that, I also had another very prominent figure in my life who she was given an option to either have a car or go to college when she graduated high school, and she chose college instead of car.
Yeah, wow.
And so when she graduated, and then watching, growing up, watching her progress in her career and get to where she's at right now I'd always admired her for it. So, I told myself early, like, if I want to be successful like that, I have to go to college.
Yeah.
The guy told me that, his mom put him through college so he didn't have to be in a ditch digging ditches or in a hole digging ditches.
Yeah.
Should probably go to college.
Yeah.
And then, so when I was like 19, the girl I was dating just graduated high school, and she was getting ready to start college. And I was like, you know what? Now's the time. And so I followed her and started, which, was probably the wrong reason to start college, but
hey,
whatever reason you got
done.
to, it's a good answer.
Yeah.
And then, again, I did it for a couple of years. Things got hard. Money became an issue, and other things. And that was, as I alluded to earlier, the Army was actually like a solution to a lot of those problems.
Yeah.
So
would you for like, if somebody younger is seeing this and they're maybe in that 18 to 22 age band and they're just like a little bit unsure about, really, they kind of have no path, would you recommend going to the Army or some branch of the military? I mean, you can be totally candid, like it.
Yeah, but for the experience in general, yeah. I mean, I was in during a wartime, so a lot of the things that I experienced were usually in Iraq. I mean, within a month or a couple months of graduating basic training, I was in Kuwait prepping for our movement. And at the time, we weren't flying into Baghdad. We were driving from Kuwait to Baghdad still when I went my first tour.
Yeah, wow.
And then my second tour, I went back. It was during the troop surge.
Dude, I remember.
Yeah.
Wow, I forgot that was a thing.
Yeah,
that happened when I was in high school.
Yeah, I think 2006 to 2009 or 2007, 2009, whatever it was. Mm-hmm. My unit was actually the last unit to to go for the troop surge. So
wow,
they held us off and postponed our deployment date was supposed to be in March, and then it was May, and then we're definitely going in July, and then fast forward, it's like, all right, the actual deployment time is this, and finally we went. I think I left, and I was torch partying for the second round, so I went there to get to Kuwait and meet the ship and download everything, and then I went to Baghdad. We're stationed at a Fob Falcon. Just south of Baghdad International Airport for the entire trip. And so but most of my experience in the Army was actual deployment time.
Yeah. Mine was not.
Yeah.
0.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. I mean, we still spent like 2 years in garrison.
Yeah, of course.
2.5 years in Iraq.
Yeah.
So the 2 years in garrison it was fun. I mean, the work was redundant. I mean, I was a combat unit and I was enlisted. So my work was Monday morning or every morning, wake up, do PT.
Yep.
Mondays you're in the motor pool.
Yep.
Tuesdays we're discussing the training plan. Mm-hmm. Wednesdays we're doing this part of training. Yep. Thursday we're going out to the range. Yep. Friday we're cleaning the motor pool.
Cleaning the weapons.
Yeah. Well, we weren't allowed to go home
Rust
from a
on
range.
The bayonet.
Yeah, we weren't allowed to go home or check our weapons back into the vault until they're clean. So
that's right.
That was done on range days, and then Fridays was in the motor pool again. In our little training room, and then if any of the parts we had requested came in, we'd put those on the vehicles and then sweep the motor pool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Make sure the tracks are online. Make sure the motor pool's clean. There's not one speck of dirt, not one rock.
Yeah.
And then weekend. So it was just a lot of fun, especially in Stewart.
Yeah.
I mean, because you got
go to Savannah on the weekends.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Tybee Beach.
I wasn't
so
much.
much?
Yeah, I wasn't so much fan of Tybee. I was definitely downtown Savannah.
Yeah.
I mean,
I lived in downtown Savannah while I was there for a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
When my
drive was killer. Man. 50 minutes every day.
Oh yeah.
Each way 50 minutes.
Yeah. No, I was in the barracks for before the tour. After the tour, I was when I got married, my wife stayed in Florida and I stayed in Stewart. So before the deployment, I lived in an apartment right outside of Stewart, so it wasn't bad.
Yep.
When I got back, I was kind of homeless, so I had to find. I couldn't get barracks because I was married. Where they tried to put me was in the reservist barracks that they use for training, and those things everything stunk of mold. I was like, I'm not staying here.
Did you live in the apartments that were right outside I think it was the west gate with the barbecue joint right outside of it? No.
I don't remember exactly what was around. So I know you come in the main gate. You come in the main gate, and then you make a left. So if you go right, you get the PX and everything over here. If you make a left, it goes back. That's where I think 3rd Brigade and 4th Brigade headquarters were. Yeah. And then we were like a quarter mile past the 4th Brigade headquarters.
Oh, okay, gotcha. I ran it when you said I lived in an apartment right outside base. I'm like, so did I for like a year.
Yeah. We called it was it Hinesville or Hinesville. We called it Heinz Vegas.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
But when I got back, I was kind of homeless. So I found one of my buddies. He got in an apartment in Savannah. There's right next to the interstate, so it wasn't too bad of a trip. So I went to live with him for the last month. Yeah, because I was part of the stop loss group. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It wasn't my stop loss wasn't bad. I was only stop loss for a couple of months. Buddy of mine, he was stop loss for almost 2 years.
What is that? Where you can't out process?
Yeah,
I remember hearing that on the news, but what did that mean?
Yeah, so when your unit's set to deploy, or your unit's in the deployment rotation, 3 months prior to deployment, and then for 3 months after for out processing is considered your stop loss period. So I forget what days it was, but my buddy was actually scheduled to get out of the military. He was only on a 3-year contract total or something like that. He was scheduled to get out of the military in February. Yeah. And our initial orders had us deploying in May.
So the stop loss overlapped.
So the stop loss.
And it hooked him on for another, 2 years?
The stop loss hit him by a week. And so the deployment period was 15 months. Yeah. So 3 months prior, 3 months after. So that's a total of 21 months just there. Yeah. So it gets better. Yeah. Our deployment got extended. We didn't deploy in May. We didn't actually deploy until the actual deployment time was in October, November. Yeah. So it got pushed an additional 6 months. Yeah. And so he had 21 months from the initial one, and then tacked 6 months onto that. Wow.
Yeah. Wild.
Yeah. So his 3-year contract.
18-month deployments?
15.
15 months?
For the troop surge.
Oh, I got it.
Yeah, our usual. My first deployment was only 12 months.
I was going to say, I'm like, wow, that seems really long.
Yeah. Most units that I'm aware of in the Army did 12-month deployments. For the troop surge, we did 15. I mean, there are a couple units that only had to do 4. I want to say when my first deployment with 3rd ACR, we're in Talifar, and we had an airborne division. I forget which one that got attached to us. They came in, did their thing, and then they were out. And then, that was their whole deployment. I think it was 4 or 5 months. Wow. Some Marine units are the same. They only went in for a few months, but I think there's others that went in for a year at a time. I'm not 100% sure on that. So if I misquoted it, Marines out there, I'm sorry.
He apologizes. Simplify. So looking to the future for MES Group, what's with what you have going on, getting the certification, to where you can get the federal jobs. What is the vision for the future?
A lot of things that we're envisioning for the future. I mean, a lot of things my partners talk about constantly, and where we see going. I mean, so naturally is just to grow. It's like in business, you're either growing or you're dying.
That's right.
There's no staying stagnant.
Yeah.
And so our our approach to projects is we look for anything in our wheelhouse that we think that we have a chance of getting.
Yeah.
And, we chase. I mean, I know you said you wanted to discuss federal contract process and from start to finish. So I'll segue to that afterwards. But, again, is to chase those projects. I mean, a lot of our teaming partners, architecture firms that we work with, other engineering firms that we work with, they're in the same boat. A lot of them, they specialize in the federal market and the same thing. And, they're continually growing. And so obviously, naturally, we want to grow with them as well. So developing relationships, maintaining relationships. And this is where, even though I started the side company to help and to create, another revenue for myself personally, ultimately with MES, it's a 25-year established company. It has these relationships in place. And so in buying the company, buying the name, I get that experience. The relationships don't become my relationships, obviously. I mean, I have to go and develop those relationships with the other owners of the companies and, actually perform well enough to where they want to continue doing business with us.
Yeah.
But I mean, as they grow, we hope to grow with them. We can't do it by no one company can do the whole thing by themselves. You have to have those relationships in order to be successful.
Totally.
And so, like I said, the previous owners, I mean, he taught me in the short time I was with him. He taught me a great deal about the politics of it, and not just owning the company, but in the industry we're in specifically. So, again, the vision is to continue to develop those relationships, to find more teaming partners, and to develop those relationships as well. See where we can help them, where they can help us, what different areas we can go into.
Yeah.
The projects we work in, they're very rewarding to me. I've like always been in construction for a good portion of my life, and being in there now, and then being a patient at the VA and working with veterans and helping make their things. So those are the kind of things that we look forward doing and really pressing inside that market. But we still have our other interest in areas that we work in, such as multifamily in the private sector. I was really excited to see the project in St. Pete got the green light for the $6 billion rework they're doing for the whole downtown, and a lot of it's going to be multifamily.
And the stadium got approved too.
Yep. My wife told me yesterday
that's
the stadium
wild.
got approved.
That's going to be crazy.
So I'm really hoping that some of my teaming partners on the multifamily side and the retail side of things, I'm really, really hoping that they get involved in those projects and
because that will carry your MES into them, right?
Yeah,
like via your being teaming. Obviously, you provide pieces that they need.
Yeah,
all the MEPs and
right.
Oh, dude, that's awesome.
And do our part with that, and so really, really hoping that to get involved with all those projects.
Yeah.
That
is good. Just gonna be. You know what? I mean, I think it's really cool that St. Pete got that. I was hoping that they would move the stadium to Ybor. Did you hear about those plans of
they've been talking about moving that city or moving the stadium and the team to Tampa for as long as I know. So
I guess it's good that they didn't. Did you know that St. Pete has more billionaires than any other city in Florida, including Miami? Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Crazy fact. Ashley, that's right? It's St. Pete has more billionaires than any other city in Florida.
I didn't personally read that, but you told me that.
Yeah, I've read that.
Okay.
It's like an Inc. magazine or like Forbes thing, but I saw it and I was going through. I'm like, okay, Miami's going to be number one, and it was St. Pete.
Wow.
Yeah, there's more wealthy people in St. Pete than people realize.
Okay, I mean, is that a recent movement or is that something that's just
very recent?
Yeah,
and it makes sense with the high rise developments and the really high end condos that have been going up. There's space for them now.
Yeah. I don't want to forgive me for jumping into the political sphere, but I think when Rick Scott was governor, he started several programs to try to entice companies
Yeah.
to move their headquarters here. You know, tax
It's
breaks,
genius.
things like
Yeah.
that is like, you know, and from what I understand, a lot of them have.
Yeah.
I think DeSantis has been you know, continuing that effort.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if it's those policies specifically that
Sure.
that did it, but you know, I'm sure.
Yeah, but there's a governmental mindset of like, hey, as a government, are we going to punish businesses that come here, or are we actually going to go out of our way to reward them? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a tax is a punishment, a tax break is an incentive.
Right.
So it's like, what do you want? You can easily get what you want. Just put the incentive in place for on a governmental level. You know what I mean? So yeah,
Yeah.
I totally it totally makes sense.
You know, and tax breaks for my industry in particular are it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It should be
What
common knowledge.
what does that mean?
So there's a tax break for, it's called 179D.
Yeah.
And it's to provide incentives to encourage business owners to go through and any renovation project they do to increase the efficiency of the building.
Yes.
Lighting,
I do know about this.
Yeah, making sure that lighting controls are in line with the latest and greatest version of ASHRAE 90.1. You know, the most current version of the building code requires us to comply with. They give us two paths. I mean, the building code has one path, and then it gives you the alternate path of complying with ASHRAE. So if you know, private business owners go through and do the renovations to existing buildings, you know, they get this tax break.
Yeah.
For the A&E, for the government projects, the government doesn't get tax breaks.
Government doesn't get a tax break?
They don't get taxes.
Yeah, of course.
The federal government. And so that's passed on to the architects and engineers of record to do the design.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's awesome. Wow. That's holy crap. I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
no,
Dude, that's
it's
amazing.
It's a joke that the not the company I'm at now, but the previous company I worked with.
Yeah.
The owner, he was always there on Sundays. He liked being there on Sundays. His phones weren't ringing. You know,
It's quiet time.
It was quiet time.
Deep work.
And at the time, we were very busy. I mean, the industry, the work itself was very, very busy. We were doing a lot of high schools in the area.
Yeah.
And so I was often there Saturday and Sunday myself working, just because there was not enough time in the week to get my work done.
Yeah.
And I, you know, that soldier mentality, you know,
Yep.
was it the bigger the suck, the bigger the reward. And
I got another one, but it's a little bad, but I'm gonna say it anyways. Mine in my unit is always shit sandwich, take a bite. The number of times I heard that was like uncomfortable.
yeah. And so like the harder for me, the harder something was to do, like if it was just a grueling task, working 12, 14 hours a day, like there was a time frame when I would be to work. I'd typically show up to the office later than usual. I get there like 9:30, 10 o'clock some days. At the time I had to take my daughter to school, and I couldn't drop her off before 9.
Yeah.
So I would get to the office a little bit later, but then I would typically work through lunch. The time I smoke cigarettes, so I'd just go outside and do a 5-minute smoke break instead of doing lunch.
Yeah.
And then continue working. Go home at like 5:30. Go home at 5:30. Eat dinner. Do a quick workout. But not lately, obviously. But at the time I was trying to stay fit.
Yeah.
I do my workout, take a shower, eat dinner.
Yeah.
You know, kiss my wife goodnight, and go back to the office till 10, 11 o'clock every night.
Oh wow.
And did that Monday through Friday, and then I'd go in on Saturdays and Sundays, and just, you know, I'd give myself tasks that I had to complete, whether the task took 3 hours or 10 hours. Just, you know, get there, get it done, so that way then I can start the next week. And
There's another word for that: go home criteria.
yeah,
We used to say that a lot in our unit. It'd be like, hey, here's your go home criteria. When it's done, go home. If it's not done, don't go home.
right.
Yeah.
So, you know, I was trying to provide context to a different point, but so one day I'm there on a Sunday, and the owner comes out, and he liked to, you know, he would get a break from what he was doing. He would sit there and talk to me. And sometimes, you know, him and I would talk for hours.
Yeah.
You know, he was who I had the first interview with, that we sat down and talked for 2.5 hours about literally everything but engineering or what the company did.
Yeah.
And he would give me a lot of insight to the business side. One of the times he made a joke about the taxes.
Yeah.
And, you know, because I was I said something about bonuses we got or something like that. And he was like, yeah, I was like, oh, yeah, it was right after the Trump administration had passed their tax cut act of whatever in 2017. And so I made mention of the bonus we got. I was like, oh, yeah, I guess the new tax cut act, whatever, you get the incentives for giving us bonuses and stuff. And he laughed. He's like, you'd think, but I haven't paid taxes the next amount of years. And then I didn't realize why. Yeah. And so I found out, it's likely due to the 179D. I'm just assuming. I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
Because again, projects we did there were government. Different side of government. We're doing a lot of projects for the municipality and the school in Pinellas County Schools, Hillsborough County, or a couple projects for Hillsborough County, a lot for Pinellas County. Bradenton, Pasco County, a lot of schools. If you're familiar with the area, while I was there as a design engineer, I did the stadium or the stadium here at Clearwater High School. We redid the concession stand, locker rooms, field house things there at Clearwater High. Did the complete redesign and rebuild of Largo High School.
Wow,
a bunch of elementary schools in the area. So. Like I said, when I got to work there, again, it was not only was it rewarding getting to be in this industry, but I get to actually design schools that I went to as a child.
Oh, dude, that's awesome.
And so that was always fun. Did a lot of work for St. Pete College, some work at USF as well.
Yeah.
So it was always fun there.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize. And so when he made that joke, and then fast forward now that I'm a business ownership and I'm being made aware of these things, I'm like, that makes sense.
Quite a bombshell.
It's quite a bombshell.
Yeah. Good. So Dave, we got to wrap up here. Anything, if somebody's looking to get in touch with you, how should they reach out to you?
I can leave my business card, our website, mesgroupinc.com. Probably the easiest ways. If you want to, when I give you my business card, you can put it on the podcast.
Sure. Yeah.
That's
yeah, totally, man. Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's not going to be necessarily what I'm thinking of is there. I have a decent number of contractors that watch this. So,
okay.
If there's contractors that are looking for a upstanding MEP engineer to handle one of their projects, boom. In fact, we probably actually need to talk offline about some different projects.
Yeah, we do design build work. That's usually the contractor's hired directly by the client, and they'll bring us on board to be the engineer of record. And we do that as prime for the AE. So they'll hire my firm directly, and then we'll source the other engineers they need, if they need an architect on the project. And we also do the design bid build, which is usually it'd be an architect that gets hired there, and they'll bring us on board with them. And then for the federal market, we chase those as prime. So we go through the initial solicitation.
Yeah.
If we're deemed to be one of the most highly qualified firms that submit response to the solicitation, then we go through the shortlisting process, which is often an interview.
Yeah.
Either written over Microsoft Teams or in person.
Yeah.
And then if we're lucky enough to win, be selected from after the interview process, then we go through the RFP, which we go through and actually write the fee proposal.
Yeah.
Negotiate with the federal government because they, we want to make a lot of money on the project, and they're like, well, we only can spend this much. So
of course. Yeah.
Let's find some common ground.
Yeah.
And then from there, we get notice to proceed and execute.
Love it. Good. Well, thank you again for the time. It was a pleasure. Sir. Great conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure we'll do this again soon.
Yes, sir.